The 6 most striking UFO sightings ever since humanity got the opportunity to look beyond the Earth's atmosphere and began to explore space in earnest. Earthlings have always been worried about the same question: are we alone in the universe? To this day, official science has not given an unambiguous answer to this question, simply because it does not have sufficient grounds for this. The unofficial one says, no, we are not alone. And moreover, I am absolutely sure that the Earth and its inhabitants have long been the object of research and visits from their brothers in mind. Unofficial science, confident in the existence of aliens and their periodic contacts with Earth, is called ufology, from the English abbreviation UFO, in Russian, UFO, that is, unidentified flying object. But ufology is not limited to the study of UFOs alone. Her sphere of interest is much broader. It includes all phenomena on and off Earth that have not yet been found a logical explanation, as well as terrestrial and extraterrestrial objects that are attributed to extraterrestrial origin. Although ufology is still not recognized as a science, and in many countries including Russia it is officially considered a quasi-science, or even pseudo-science, its fans and supporters even have their own day, Ufologists' Day, World UFO Day, which is celebrated on July 2nd. On the eve of this day, Mir tells his readers about 6 famous cases of UFO sightings and contacts with them, recorded since 1947, since the phenomenon of flying saucers was first documented. The first meeting with the flying saucers, 1947, Washington State, USA. Arnold Kennett, an American businessman and amateur pilot, is considered to be the first person who managed to describe in detail his encounter with unidentified flying objects. It was after his story that the term flying saucer appeared and forever entered the World Dictionary. Since, according to Kenneth, it was similar to those aircraft that he met on June 24, 1947, over the Cascade Mountains in Washington State, located on the west coast of the United States. According to the amateur pilot, 9 incomprehensible objects resembling discs in profile and in plan, crescents with a protrusion at the top, flew about 20 to 25 miles and disappeared from sight. For about 3 minutes, I watched as a chain of objects moving like saucers on water, like thrown flat stones, stretching for at least 5 miles, maneuvered between high mountain peaks. They were as flat as frying pans and reflected the sun's rays like a mirror. I saw it all quite clearly and distinctly, the American pilot wrote. Kenneth was most alarmed by the speed of the flying saucers. According to his calculations, it was much higher than the speed of sound, which at that time was not capable of any known aircraft on the planet. The Roswell disaster, 1947, New Mexico, USA. The events that led to talk that the government and the military were hiding the truth about aliens unfolded 2 weeks after Kenneth's sensational meeting with the flying saucers. A few days earlier, on July 3rd, farmer Mark Brazel from New Mexico saw a bright flash and a thunderclap at night, which shook his house, and the next morning found a wasteland covered with metal fragments similar to thick foil, which retained their shape under any impact, bars of some light material, non-flammable and non-breakable, and other incomprehensible things. On July 8, the press officer of Roswell Air Base made a statement that the found flying disc was delivered to the base, but a day later this statement was disavowed by the higher command. The debris was called the remains of a fallen weather balloon. The witnesses continued to claim that it did not look like any weather balloon. Later, eyewitnesses began to appear, allegedly seeing aliens found near the crashed UFO, which were seized and examined by the military. The Mantell pilot incident, 1948, Kentucky, USA. This incident can be considered the first case of human death as a result of an attempt to investigate UFOs up close. On January 7, 1948, 4 Mustang or 51 fighters were lifted from Godman Air Base, tasked with catching up and exploring an incomprehensible object approaching the airbase. All 4 pilots clearly saw an object in front of them, which they described as metallic, of enormous size, round like a tear, and sometimes seemed liquid. This description, according to the pilots, was later given by the command. 3 pilots returned to base, and one was the flight commander, Captain Thomas F. Mantell, continued to chase the UFO in an attempt to get as close to it as possible. I'm approaching to get a better look at it, the pilot informed the dispatcher. He's right in front of me and he's still flying twice as slow as I am. This thing is metallic in appearance and of enormous size. Now she is gaining altitude and going at the same speed as me. That is, 360 miles per hour. I will climb to a height of 20,000 feet and, if I cannot get closer, I will stop the pursuit. Soon the connection with the pilot was lost, and later a crashed Mantell fighter was found. It turned out that the pilot died of suffocation even before his plane hit the ground, exploding in the air. One of the main oddities that make ufologists talk about meeting aliens today was the time difference between the death of the pilot and the time of the plane crash. Mantell's wristwatch stopped at 15:10, communication with the plane disappeared at 15:15, and he suffered a disaster only an hour and a half later, at 16:45. The Socorro case, 1964, New Mexico, USA. After the events of 1947–48, UFOs began to be observed around the world with sufficient regularity, but it was very rare to trust the stories about these encounters. The events of April 24, 1964, looked all the more strange in the vicinity of the city of Socorro, where patrol policeman Lonnie Zamora first saw a column of flame descending to the ground. And then, when he drove closer, a strange object similar to a silver car and two unknown people next to it. I didn't see those two for long when I stopped for 2 seconds to examine the object, the policeman later said. Nothing unusual. No hats, no helmets. People are like people. Squat adults or tall boys. When they noticed me, one of these creatures turned to the car and started in surprise. After calling for help and driving around the hill on which the strange device stood, Zamora saw no longer a silver car, but something egg-shaped, and there were no living creatures nearby. And at the same moment, the object began to make pops, then flames appeared from below. And after a few seconds, there was nothing on the hill. Later, dents in the ground and traces of flame exposure were found at that place. The Socorro case is considered one of the most reliable examples of possible contact with UFOs of extraterrestrial origin. The fireball in Kecksburg, 1965, Pennsylvania, USA. A year and a half later, on December 9, 1965, events unfolded in the vicinity of the town of Kecksburg, adding fuel to the fire of discussions about secret military research on UFOs. That day, a shining fireball swept over the eastern coast of North America. It was watched by thousands of people in the United States and Canada, from Ontario to Pennsylvania. In the end, the UFO disappeared in the Kecksburg area, and the place of its alleged fall was immediately cordoned off by the military. Witnesses from among the local residents managed to see how a strange bell-shaped structure was pulled out of the forest, which was loaded onto an Army heavy-duty trailer and taken away in an unknown direction. Opponents of the UFO version claimed that near Kecksburg, the military seized a crashed Soviet satellite or the head of a ballistic missile. However, one of the few photographs preserved after the incident shows a strange object slightly taller than a man. Unlike any of the famous Soviet satellites, not even on the head of the rocket. The Tehran case, 1976, Tehran, Kingdom of Iran. In a long line of examples of UFO sightings above the Earth's surface, the so-called Tehran case stands apart. As the U.S. Department of Defense Intelligence Agency noted in its report, according to the criteria for evaluating such incidents, this was an outstanding case. The document notes that it is considered a classic UFO sighting that meets all criteria for reliable observation. The object was observed from several different positions: Shamiran, Warabad, airplanes, a control tower, and a dried-up salt lake. High reliability of many observers, Air Force General, qualified pilots and experienced controllers. Visual observations confirmed by radar. Similar electromagnetic effects were observed on 3 different aircraft. There were physiological effects associated with the appearance of UFOs: loss of night vision due to the brightness of the object. UFOs had great maneuverability. In addition, all the pilots who observed UFOs, and these were not only 2 military pilots, but also the crew of a civilian passenger plane, claimed that at a distance of about 40 to 45 miles from the brightly glowing object, their electronic equipment failed, and on one of the military aircraft the weapons control system also failed. The object did not allow them to approach. A smaller UFO detached from the main object even flew around the control tower of the military airfield, turning off all equipment on it, and later landed. But the results of the survey of its landing site remain classified.